Chelsea and the fact that they don't want Jadon Sancho. How has this situation come about?
Yeah, well, obviously, Jadon Sancho was a key player for Chelsea last season. 31 appearances in the Premier League, 7 goals and assists, and he was on loan from Manchester United. But there was an obligation inserted into that contract that Chelsea could activate for £25 million. There was no loan fee, crucially, for Jadon Sancho going to Chelsea. But Chelsea are paying Manchester United £5 million not to buy Jadon Sancho. And I can see the way you're looking at me there, Mike. You're going, well, hang on a second, what's going on there? Quite simply, Jadon Sancho's representative spoke to Chelsea about potentially joining permanently, but because Manchester United were paying around 50% of his wages to play for Chelsea, he had to fit in to their wage structure, which would have potentially meant him taking a rather hefty pay cut to sign permanently for Chelsea. So therefore, they couldn't find some common ground with regards to that deal. So Chelsea said, thanks very much. We'll pay the penalty in the contract and we're going to be sending you back to Manchester United. Now, this is a player that has a lot of interest from around Europe and crucially started the big games at the end of the season and, of course, the Europa Conference League final. So no question he's got quality and ability, but wage is the stumbling block. And Chelsea just said, on this occasion, we're going to send you.
Mark's bigging him up, James. But did he do enough at Chelsea to have a lot of options now?
Well, I think there were really promising stages at the very beginning and right at the very end with that goal against Real Betis last week in the Conference League, which just showed what he can do and what we were used to seeing at Borussia Dortmund. It's something we've not seen a huge amount from Jadon Sancho in the Premier League, either at Chelsea or at Manchester United. But Enzo Maresca was full of praise for him when he spoke about him in the final few weeks of the season, saying that if we qualify for the Champions League, then it's because of Jadon Sancho. If we win the Conference League, it's because of Jadon Sancho. I think there was a huge amount of credit which he built up there. And as Mark's saying there, I don't think it's a case of Chelsea not willing to spend the £25 million fee. It was more about they couldn't get him to fit within the wage structure. The question you'd have is, were there conversations that took place at the start of last season when this deal was agreed? Because at that point, if Chelsea were to sign him permanently, then that conversation you'd think would have already happened about the fact is, listen, you're on this amount of money now, but if you do sign permanently, you're going to have to take a huge wage cut from what you're on at Manchester United. So I think, as far as United are concerned, there'll be immense frustration because I think at the start of last season they felt that they were able to close a really disappointing chapter with Jadon Sancho. But now this summer they're going to have to try to find a way to get him out of the football club. Perhaps there's a way in which he's integrated under Ruben Amorim, who's not had a chance to work with him, who has no relationship with him whatsoever. Perhaps there is that case. It seems unlikely. I think the preference from all parties, including Jadon Sancho, would be a clean break now. There is still 1 year left on that contract. Let's bear in mind how much money Manchester United have paid Jadon Sancho not to play for their football club. They helped fund his wages at Borussia Dortmund, though because Borussia Dortmund did so well, it ended up being quite a good deal for Manchester United. But they were still covering some of his wages whilst he was at Chelsea. That's how they made this deal work. They're expecting offers, and a number of clubs in the Premier League and Europe, we understand, have approached Sancho's representatives about what the condition of a deal could look like. As I mentioned, 1 year left on his contract. A loan can't be ruled out at this stage, but ideally there would be a permanent sale. Whether or not Manchester United can get £25 million or not, that felt like quite a fair fee that Chelsea paid. I don't think he did his credentials any huge favours at Chelsea, but I don't think you can write him off. He's still just 25 years of age. There's definitely a player there. He's shown that. But unfortunately at Chelsea, not throughout the whole season. OK. Mark, are there tricky times ahead at United, uncomfortable times? Because Sancho's gone back, Anthony's going to have to go back, Rashford's going to have to go back. Tricky times?
Yeah, potentially. Let's be honest. There's been a lot of tricky times at Old Trafford over the course of the last few seasons. Things that really aren't going in the way in which Sir Jim Ratcliffe had hoped, the fans have hoped. So they're going to have to make some big decisions. And you've seen that over the course of the last 12 months. You know, there's been a lot of people that have worked at Manchester United that have lost their jobs. There's going to have to be big decisions made with regards to some of those players you've mentioned about the football side of things. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe has quite openly said, look, we cannot afford to keep operating in the way we have been. We have to trim costs. We have to be more sustainable. We have to be careful. We have to get our investment right. And when you look at those players, Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho, Anthony, best part of £1 million a week there that's going to be potentially not involved in that first team if Ruben Amorim doesn't step in and say, actually, clean slate, these boys can play for me and they can prove that they're Manchester United players over the course of pre-season. And if they do that, no problem. However, you get the feeling that the accountants might just be leaning in and saying, actually, we could do with lifting him off the wage bill. He represents 100% pure profit for PSR. So therefore, actually, our favourite situation would be that these depart the football club. And that's where they're going to have to find suitors. And that's the problem. Because is someone going to pay £40 million for Marcus Rashford? Is someone going to get close to the £80 million that they paid for Anthony? He's just been on loan at Real Betis. So therefore, Manchester United are probably going to have to accept we're going to lose some money, but how much can we afford to lose and how much do we want to lose? And of course, wages, another problem. James has mentioned it there. When you're on £300,000 a week and someone offers you 150, you're going to say, actually, I'm not going to leave Manchester United. So then United have got to be clever and creative and say, well, we'll make up the difference for you to go.
Yeah, interesting. We'll have much more on United to come, but I want to go back to Chelsea, James. Liam Delap, where are we with this one?
Well, Chelsea is set to announce the signing shortly. They've activated his £30 million release clause at Ipswich. Plenty of suitors for Liam Delap, but he's decided he wants Chelsea because of their style of play, because of a relationship he already has with Enzo Maresca, the quality of the squad, the ambition, the project that Chelsea are building right now, and the likelihood he feels of Chelsea challenging for major trophies. We're talking about the Premier League and the Champions League over the course of the next few seasons. Chelsea want him in their squad in time to play in this Club World Cup, which starts in a fortnight, which means he wouldn't be available to play for England under 21s. But in terms of that announcement, we're expecting that very shortly.
OK, after the Sancho deal fell through for Chelsea, is Jamie Gittens the answer?
Yeah, it's something they explored it in January. It's something they're going to look at exploring once again. There's 8 or 9 attacking players that Chelsea are looking at in this transfer window. When it comes to Gittens, there's real similarities with Jadon Sancho. There's the Borussia Dortmund connection. There's actually the connection that they already had with Gittens, because he actually was there as a child, even before the academy days, a very, very young player. So he signed for Borussia Dortmund from Manchester City at a very young age. Really impressed in the first half of this season. He broke the Champions League record in terms of being a young goal scorer for Borussia Dortmund. Scored 11 goals before January, but after that, a new manager came in, didn't feature as much, was a first-team player, didn't get as many starts. I think he was frustrated with what happened in the back end of the season. We understand a deal would be around £50 million, a significant transfer fee, but for a player who clearly has a lot of potential, a wide player, and Chelsea clearly do need wide players now because there won't be Sancho there next season. We wait to see what happens with Mykhailo Mudryk as well.
Let's go to the other end of the pitch, Mark. If you listen to many a pundit, they've said Chelsea aren't going to win anything until they change their goalkeeper. It looks like they're doing something about that. Talk us through the Mike Maignan deal. Yeah,
Mike Maignan, France #1. Very different profile to what Chelsea have done over the last few windows. He's 29 years old, so he is a ready-made product to go into that first team. He's not a young player that they can develop and mould and create into what they want. So he is a finished article. We understand that Chelsea are currently in talks with AC Milan over a potential deal for Maignan. He's got just 1 year left on his AC Milan contract, and there's a confidence that Chelsea can get the deal done. So, yeah, this would be a big one, because I know a lot of Chelsea fans, and like you rightly say, pundits have said over the course of the last couple of windows, last season, if Chelsea get a really top-class, world-class goalkeeper, and that's what Chelsea feel he is, one of the best in the world, then that would be a significant step towards getting them not just into the top 4, but challenging for the Premier League title. So one to keep an eye on, but certainly getting to an advanced stage.
How have Chelsea got themselves into a position to afford bringing players in?
Well, it's
lots of different methods.
Creativity is probably the best way to look at it. They've been looking at every single avenue to maximise income.
Yep, so firstly what they looked to do at the very beginning was in terms of the long contracts they were handing out. Remember, they gave Enzo Fernandez an 8.5-year contract. Mykhailo Mudryk got similar. The rules changed, FIFA changed it, which meant that you could only spread a transfer fee across 5 years, but Chelsea initially took advantage of that, and still they are handing out long contracts. We'll see that of Liam Delap as well. Spreading that £30 million fee across 5 years works out at £6 million per year. And then one thing we saw them do, which drew quite a lot of criticism from Chelsea fans, but I think they'll feel vindicated in what they did in the end. The likes of Mason Mount, Conor Gallagher going for significant transfer fees, pure profit when it comes to profit and sustainability rules. Also, the club have sold 2 hotels to another sister company to keep them PSR compliant, and the ownership group also sold the women's team to their parent company. So some of these methods have been used to keep them compliant, which have been outside of transfers. But when you look at their transfers they've done, they'll feel that they're really happy with the squad they've got right now. Yes, it will be a big summer, but they really have overhauled that squad whilst remaining compliant with PSR. Crucially, the performances in the league, finishing 4th and winning the Conference League, means there's even more wiggle room when it comes to PSR. So they can go out and be bold in this transfer window.
They say competing in the Champions League is worth a minimum of 80 million euros. And the fact that they are going to be in the big time is massively important. And that's where Manchester United have missed out, because that windfall is huge, particularly when it comes to signing players. You know, if you get 2-3 players for 100 million, but you haven't got that 100 million, it completely changes the dynamic of what you do in a transfer window. And that's where Chelsea have done well on the pitch this season. But like James says, you've got to keep winning. You've got to get in the Champions League. You've got to get to the latter stages of the competitions, because it makes such a massive difference to the balance sheet.
As Mark says, United missed out on that, but it doesn't look like they're going to miss out on Brian Mbeumo. He looks like